When Kat walked out, she didn't just leave a room, she walked out of everyone's delusion. Every so often, a show stumbles upon a character so well written, it accidentally exposes the mediocrity of everyone else on screen. In this case, that rare specimen is Joey, the show's lone survivor of the writer's perpetual demolition derby. While the rest of the ensemble swings wildly between erratic behavior and outright nonsense, Joey stands as the last coherent pillar of competence, intelligence, and narrative dignity. He is the writer's one unintentional masterpiece, the man who commands a room without begging for approval, the only one who seems aware he's in a television show held together by chewing gum and prayer. His storylines are tight, his dialogue purposeful, his wardrobe immaculate. That leather jacket has carried more weight, emotion, and subtext than half the main cast combined. It helps that the actor inhabiting Joey actually understands subtlety, a dangerous skill in a production addicted to melodramatic spasms. He delivers his lines with a grounded realism that mocks the show's broader absurdity. His every move reminds viewers that this was once a series aspiring to intelligence. His problem, of course, is proximity. Surrounded by characters who oscillate between screaming, sobbing, and self-sabotage, Joey looks almost too competent, too self-possessed, which only reinforces how catastrophically the rest of the cast has been handled. Vanessa and Danny are the only other characters who escape total narrative disfigurement. Vanessa, ever poised and pragmatic, manages to retain a measure of self-awareness even as the plot twists around her like an underfunded carnival ride. Danny, on the other hand, benefits from sheer inertia. Her storylines are chaotic, but not stupid, which on this show qualifies as success. Every other character seems to rotate through humiliation cycles like a cursed washing machine. They're set up, knocked down, rewritten, and then forgotten until the writers remember they exist. Joey, mercifully, is immune. He's allowed to be that guy, confident, strategic, perpetually one step ahead. The contrast is almost cruel. When the rest of the cast flails about, he operates with the calm precision of a man who's already read the script and taken notes on everyone else's failures. Even the actor's absence from the opening credits feels like an unintentional metaphor. He's too good to belong. The excuse that he isn't credited because his character doesn't live in Atlanta is as laughable as the show's geography. Apparently, fictional Maryland suburbs are sacred ground, and only those who inhabit them full-time can be deemed Maine. Yet Joey's shadow looms over every plotline anyway, as though the writers know their best work is sitting just outside the main cast list. Then there's the production design, a subject that would almost be funny if it weren't so depressing. The writers, seemingly desperate to prove they can change something other than hairstyles, decided to introduce a new cafe. Viewers rejoiced briefly. After all, the characters had been haunting the same two restaurants like ghosts bound by a set designer's budget. For a fleeting moment, hope flickered. Perhaps this would be a new social hub, a place that offered variety, energy, or even realism. Instead, the cafe arrived looking like an abandoned mall corridor repurposed during a lunch break. Its decor, somewhere between hospital break room and airport smoothie bar, managed to drain life from every scene filmed there. The set was supposed to add vibrancy. It added confusion. Is it a cafe, a food court, or a leftover piece of scenery from another production? The so-called murals on the back wall feel like an afterthought designed to distract from the lack of chairs. The few extras eating ice cream or muffins seem as uncertain as the viewers. One almost expects a hospital orderly to walk through, pushing a gurney, and asking where the real set went. It's a missed opportunity in every sense. The cafe could have been a narrative playground, a neutral meeting place for awkward confrontations and political deals. Instead, it's a sterile hallway pretending to be a social space. The creative decision reeks of a production team congratulating itself for variety, while ignoring that aesthetics also require coherence. Even the supposed mall directory glimpsed on a wall, suggesting a larger environment, only reminds the audience that this, like so much of the show, is an illusion held together by implication. The set issue encapsulates a deeper problem. This series treats world-building as an optional hobby. Viewers have endured endless conversations about restaurants that never appear, characters who go out to dinner only to end up at the same two tables, and fictional neighborhoods that feel more like limbo than lived-in spaces. When new locations do arrive, they're introduced without logic or consequence, as if someone found an empty studio corner and decided to decorate it with thrift store furniture. The irony is that fans have been begging for new settings: a courtroom, an office, a modeling agency, anything that could justify half the professions these characters allegedly hold. Instead, they receive a cafe that looks like a broom closet with pastry props. It's almost poetic. The show consistently chooses the least meaningful version of progress. Adding insult to injury, some viewers tried to rationalize the decision by insisting that Atlanta's abundance of food halls inspired the look. If that's the case, Atlanta deserves an apology. What's on screen isn't homage, it's punishment. The frustration over the cafe's existence isn't merely aesthetic. It's emblematic of how the show mismanages priorities. Fans have been clamoring for basic narrative consistency, completed investigations, resolved storylines, homes for characters who apparently live nowhere, and workspaces for professionals who supposedly have careers. Instead, they receive a half-furnished cafe. Naomi still has no office, Chelsea and Kat lack bedrooms, and Shanice, a nurse and central figure, appears to live at her workplace. The production behaves as if the audience won't notice that half its characters float through the story without any physical or emotional grounding. Adding another public place isn't innovation, it's avoidance. The show refuses to invest in spaces that could expand its world because doing so would require acknowledging its own underdevelopment. It's astonishing how thoroughly the writers misunderstand their own material. For a series that thrives on interpersonal chaos, the environment should reflect those dynamics, spaces that feel lived in, private, charged. Instead, every confrontation unfolds in public restaurants where no one seems to care that a shouting match is taking place 2 feet away. When a new cafe is introduced as a solution, one can only marvel at the level of creative bankruptcy on display. Still, within this chaos, Joey remains the anomaly, a character with genuine depth. His storylines tease power, control, and vulnerability without dissolving into absurdity. He's a strategist, a manipulator with principles, and the rare figure whose decisions actually make sense. In a cast where intelligence is often treated like a character flaw, Joey's competence feels almost subversive. His relationship with Vanessa provides the show's only semblance of emotional complexity. Their dynamic isn't romanticized. It's transactional, layered, and faintly tragic. Joey operates with the cold precision of a man who knows power is a temporary privilege, not a birthright. That awareness makes him fascinating, and it makes everyone else look foolish. Even his supposed weakness, Vanessa herself, adds dimension rather than diminishing him. She's the one variable he can't fully control, the single flaw in his otherwise unshakable armor. When she inevitably betrays him, and she will, because this is a soap that eats its own characters, it will feel earned. Unlike most of the show's melodrama, Joey's downfall, if it comes, will have narrative weight. Contrast that with the rest of the ensemble. The show seems to operate on a rotating schedule of character assassination. One week, a character is sensible and principled. The next, they're behaving like a lobotomized version of themselves. It's the writer's version of realism, apparently believing that inconsistency equals complexity. The result is a cast of seesaw personalities. Intelligence, integrity, and emotional continuity are optional accessories. Martin, Naomi, and Nicole, who might once have served as moral anchors, now wobble between hysteria and hypocrisy. Joey's existence underscores how much better the show could be if it treated coherence as an artistic value rather than an accident. The actor's performance only deepens the contrast. He doesn't overplay his lines or chase emotional payoff. He lets silence and posture do the work. In a world where everyone else is performing for invisible awards, Joey simply exists. His confidence feels earned, not scripted. He is, in short, What happens when an actor refuses to drown in the surrounding melodrama? At this point, it's difficult to tell whether the show is aware of its own contradictions. The introduction of the cafe, the inconsistent writing, the uneven characterization, all could, in theory, be interpreted as deliberate satire. But there's no evidence of self-awareness. The tone remains painfully sincere, as though the writers genuinely believe they're crafting social realism instead of unintentional farce. Every attempt at expansion, new set, new storyline, new character, feels like a misguided attempt to mask creative stagnation. The show's world doesn't grow, it rearranges its furniture. The cafe isn't a symbol of progress, but of exhaustion. The production seems to think that adding more spaces equals adding more depth, when in fact, it only highlights how little substance fills the existing ones. If Joey's presence feels like oxygen, it's because the rest of the show is suffocating. His every appearance reminds viewers what competence looks like, both in performance and in writing. It's telling that fans measure the quality of each episode by whether he appears. He has become the unofficial quality control department, the narrative's moral compass, and its only adult in the room. The true tragedy, or perhaps comedy, lies in the hierarchy of attention. The characters who command the most screen time, Derek, Ashley, Thomas, are the least interesting. They function as decorative furniture for a story that's already sagging under its own melodrama. Meanwhile, the most compelling presence on the show is sidelined, hovering at the narrative's periphery like a reminder of what could have been. The writer's excuse, that the main cast must live in Atlanta, sounds like bureaucratic satire, as if geography, not storytelling, determines narrative worth. It's emblematic of a creative team mistaking logistics for logic. If anything, Joey's distance from the show's main setting gives him clarity. He's not trapped in the endless cycles of romantic triangles and implausible reconciliations that plague everyone else. In that sense, Joey isn't merely a character. He's a critique of the show's own creative philosophy. He's what happens when consistency meets chaos, when competence enters a world allergic to it. He's proof that the writing team is capable of brilliance, even if only by accident. There's a scene, small, almost forgettable, where Joey watches chaos unfold around him and says nothing. He simply adjusts his jacket and walks away. It's the perfect encapsulation of his role in the series. The calm eye in a storm of contrived drama. It's also a perfect metaphor for the audience's relationship with the show. Viewers, too, have learned to watch the disasters, sigh, and move on, clinging to whatever remnants of intelligence remain. Joey's character works because he represents control in a universe built on hysteria. Every soap needs an anchor, the person who reminds the audience that not everyone is drowning. Joey is that anchor. The tragedy is that he's attached to a ship determined to sink itself. This show could have been something remarkable, a layered exploration of power, family, and ambition. Instead, it's become a case study in squandered potential. Yet within its rubble stands Joey, proof that good writing can survive even the most negligent environment. He's not just the best-written character, he's the only one still written with intention. The cafe debacle, the hollow sets, the meandering subplots, all of it underscores a central irony. The writers can build new spaces, but not new depth. The show keeps expanding outward because it can't expand inward. Joey's storyline, by contrast, evolves organically. It acknowledges cause and effect, loyalty and betrayal, power and vulnerability. He is, in effect, the show's accidental masterpiece, the Shakespearean figure trapped in a high-budget soap. He doesn't just elevate the material, he exposes it. And perhaps that's the show's greatest unintended success. Creating a character so well written, he makes everyone else look like they wandered in from another, dumber production. In a world of pretenders, Joey reigns, not because the writers made him perfect, but because they finally made someone real. Naomi, once a compelling figure of conviction and restraint, has been rewritten into a woman whose self-righteousness outpaces her logic. The central conflict, her refusal to have children versus Jacob's sudden desire to become a father, could have been a profound exploration of autonomy, partnership, and identity. Instead, It has devolved into a tedious loop of shouting, passive aggression, and gaslighting by dialogue. The premise is simple enough. Naomi never wanted kids. Jacob knew this. They married on that understanding. But because this is a soap that thrives on regression, Jacob wakes up one morning with a new personality and decides he's ready for fatherhood. Naomi's response, fury, disbelief, and emotional distance, is entirely justified, but the writing insists on punishing her for it. The show wants to have it both ways. Naomi is framed as cruel for standing her ground, yet the narrative winks sympathetically at Jacob for his change of heart. The double standard is breathtaking. A woman's clarity of purpose is portrayed as coldness. A man's inconsistency is treated as growth. What's worse is how the script caricatures Naomi's anger. Instead of giving her introspection or nuance, it renders her as a walking tantrum, a woman perpetually scowling at her husband for daring to exist. Every scene between them plays out like an endless referendum on female agency. The writers, in their infinite wisdom, mistake conviction for cruelty and turn one of their most layered characters into a symbol of emotional unreasonableness. Jacob, meanwhile, has become the patron saint of well-meaning idiocy. He wants to talk things out, which, in his lexicon, means talking at Naomi until she stops resisting. His self-pitying monologues about being punished for honesty could qualify as performance art. He changed the rules mid-game, lied by omission, and now wants applause for re-evaluating his choices. It's not evolution, it's ego in a cardigan. And yet, the audience is supposed to sympathize. The camera lingers on his hurt expressions, as if the mere act of wanting children redeems his deceit. The result is an infuriating morality tale in which the woman's boundaries are villainized and the man's confusion is sanctified. Television has an uncanny obsession with punishing women who don't want children. Naomi joins the ranks of countless fictional women who begin as clear, autonomous beings and end as shrill caricatures who learn to compromise. The show's creative team apparently missed the memo that character development doesn't mean surrender your principles to make the man comfortable. It's almost impressive how predictably the writers undermine her. Every time Naomi reasserts her stance, the script introduces a new emotional trap, a pregnancy scare, a manipulative conversation, a guilt-laden confession. She's forced into constant defense, while Jacob gets to bask in the glow of his supposed sincerity. Even worse is the audience manipulation. The framing makes Naomi look unreasonable for being angry that her husband reneged on a foundational life decision. The writers treat motherhood like a lifestyle accessory, not a moral choice. They write as though the horror of being coerced into pregnancy is a minor inconvenience, something a few loving speeches could fix. If the series had any interest in realism, it might let Naomi leave Jacob, grieve the marriage, and rebuild her life. Instead, it'll likely drag her through another 100 episodes of guilt-tripping until she either changes her mind or suffers the narrative punishment reserved for women with boundaries, isolation, regret, and bad lighting. If Naomi and Jacob's storyline is a masterclass in tone-deaf feminism, the Dupree family is a monument to inconsistent writing. The show treats continuity like a suggestion. Secrets appear and vanish with the reliability of soap bubbles. Critical conversations simply don't happen, as though the writers ran out of paper mid-script. Tyrell and Samantha embody this perfectly. Tyrell, allegedly a protective older brother, somehow forgets to warn his sister that the boy she's obsessed with, Nathan, treats women like collectible figurines. He knows this, he's told this, and yet he withholds the information for no discernible reason. The result? Samantha continues her downward spiral while Tyrell stands by, a bystander to his own incompetence. This isn't complexity, it's negligence disguised as tension. The writers seem to believe that characters withholding obvious information creates drama. In reality, it creates confusion. When people in real life discover something damaging about a loved one's romantic interest, they speak up. But in this universe, everyone operates under a sacred vow of silence until the plot demands an explosion. The show's continuity issues extend beyond dialogue. Scenes appear out of order, storylines contradict themselves, and emotional arcs vanish without closure. The result is less a serialized drama and more a narrative scavenger hunt. Viewers are left to piece together character motivations like detectives at a crime scene. No discussion of the show's hypocrisy is complete without Martin, the self-appointed moral compass, who seems allergic to introspection. Martin is the kind of man who confuses control with care. His version of parenting is less about guidance and more about surveillance. At first, Martin was written as a complex father figure, stern, protective, but ultimately loving. Somewhere along the line, that complexity was traded for emotional tyranny. His reaction to Samantha's teenage misbehavior, sneaking a boy into the house, developing sexual curiosity, has the subtlety of a fire alarm. He doesn't just overreact, he detonates. In one particularly painful sequence, he punishes Samantha by banning her from the one activity that gives her purpose. He claims it's for her protection, but it reads as punitive narcissism. His rage is less about her safety and more about his loss of control. It's the kind of parenting that drives children away, which, ironically, is exactly what he fears most. Martin's misogyny isn't loud or cartoonish. It's the quiet, insidious kind that cloaks itself in paternal concern. He talks about protecting Samantha from the world, but what he's really protecting is his ego. The notion that his daughter could have autonomy, emotional or sexual, sends him into crisis. The writers seem unaware of how unflattering this is. They frame Martin's outrage as noble, his overreaction as the mark of a caring father. But there's nothing noble about infantilizing your daughter because her humanity threatens you. It's not parenting, it's policing. The irony, of course, is that Martin himself is a walking contradiction. He's cheated, lied, and moralized in equal measure. He's furious that his daughter might make adult choices, yet behaves like a child every time he doesn't get his way. The man has the emotional regulation of a malfunctioning vending machine. Press any button, and something irrational comes out. Samantha's arc, meanwhile, plays like a parody of after-school television. She's a 16-year-old who somehow knows less about relationships and sex than most 12-year-olds with internet access. The writers want to depict innocence, but they end up writing ignorance. Her motivations are paper-thin. She's curious, in love, confused. None of it feels authentic because the show refuses to acknowledge that teenagers, even reckless ones, are capable of reason. Samantha doesn't need to be a paragon of virtue. She just needs to make sense. Instead, she's written as a plot device in a morality tale about female desire. Her father's hysteria over her budding sexuality exposes the series' puritanical streak. The implication seems to be that girls who think about sex must be punished until they learn shame. In that sense, Samantha isn't a character. She's a sermon, and not a particularly clever one. It's a shame because the premise had potential. A young woman navigating first love, family pressure, and social expectations could have been compelling. Instead, she's reduced to a pawn in Martin's ongoing crusade against autonomy. The scenes meant to depict family tension end up feeling like psychological warfare disguised as dinner-table dialogue. The recurring disease across all these arcs is what could be called narrative constipation. No one tells anyone anything until it's too late. Secrets aren't withheld out of fear or strategy, but because the writers need a reason for chaos. Characters don't communicate like people. They communicate like malfunctioning plot devices. Tyrell doesn't warn Samantha. Naomi doesn't tell Jacob she's planning to leave. Martin doesn't consult his sister before exploding. Everyone lives in their own echo chamber, and the show mistakes this for realism. The irony is that genuine drama often comes from over-communication, from people saying too much, not too little. Instead, the show's world functions on selective amnesia. Characters forget what they know whenever it's convenient. Tyrell's silence about Nathan's misogyny, for example, undermines everything we're told about his protective nature. It's not a moral flaw, it's a continuity error masquerading as character depth. Even the men who aren't central to the main plots suffer from baffling transformations. Doug, once an affable background player, suddenly decides he's a Machiavellian power broker. One day, he's loyal to Joey. The next, he's declaring himself invincible and belittling Ted like a man possessed. No build-up, no motivation, just an overnight personality transplant. The show's approach to male ambition is comically simplistic. Power for these men is less about intellect or strategy, and more about who can shout the loudest while drinking the hardest. They are caricatures of masculinity, strutting, posturing, collapsing. The series seems convinced that yelling in a blazer equals leadership. Joey, again, remains the outlier, the only man who wields power with precision instead of tantrum. His competence exposes the other's fragility. Every time he shares a scene with Doug or Martin, it's like watching a wolf surrounded by poodles. Bill, another supposedly complex character, vacillates between brilliance and idiocy. His involvement with Haley, the show's resident moral vacuum, is a case study in how ego can render a man blind. Despite every red flag waving in front of his face, he persists, convinced he can fix her. His storyline, poisoned both literally and figuratively, serves as the show's accidental metaphor, self-inflicted suffering disguised as destiny. When he's not being duped or drugged, Bill is actually interesting, a man whose intelligence collapses under his own pride. But the writing doesn't seem to know what to do with him. One week, he's a tragic hero. The next, he's comic relief. Like so many of the show's men, he's a victim of the writer's inability to choose a lane. If there's a unifying theme across Naomi, Jacob, Martin, and the rest, it's inconsistency. Personalities shift mid-episode, moral compasses spin like ceiling fans, and motivations rewrite themselves without warning. The writers call this showing flaws. In truth, it's narrative whiplash. Martin, for example, can spend one scene preaching about integrity and the next berating his sister for doing exactly what he preaches. Naomi oscillates between empowerment and self-destruction. Jacob alternates between romantic devotion and emotional sabotage. Even the secondary characters, like Tyrell and Samantha, behave as though they're possessed by whichever writer happened to handle the week's script. The result is a collection of people who no longer feel like people. They're chess pieces moved by unseen hands, performing emotional algebra that never balances. The audience isn't watching characters evolve, they're watching them reboot. What makes it worse is that the show seems proud of this inconsistency. It treats hypocrisy as sophistication, as though contradicting yourself every 5 minutes makes you human. There's a difference between flawed characters and incoherent ones. This show doesn't understand that. Naomi's moral rigidity might have been compelling if the show hadn't also written her as impulsively cruel. Martin's fatherly concern might have resonated if he weren't also a walking symbol of repression. Jacob's sincerity might have earned sympathy if it weren't paired with manipulation. These contradictions aren't psychological depth. They're sloppiness masquerading as artistry. The writing mistakes chaos for complexity and noise for emotion. Every confrontation is a shouting match. Every resolution is temporary. The result isn't drama, it's exhaustion. And yet, beneath the rubble, there's potential. The Naomi Jacob storyline could have interrogated how relationships crumble when foundational values clash. The Dupree dysfunction could have mirrored real generational trauma. Martin's authoritarian parenting could have evolved into an examination of toxic masculinity. But instead of exploring these avenues, the show sprints toward melodrama. It doesn't trust silence, subtext, or subtlety. Every moral conflict becomes a screaming contest, every disappointment a conspiracy. What could have been meaningful becomes mechanical. The tragedy is that the actors often seem ready to deliver something better. You can see it in fleeting expressions, moments where they try to inject honesty into overwrought scripts. But sincerity can't survive in a world allergic to logic. In the end, Naomi, Jacob, Martin, and the rest form the show's emotional core, and its greatest embarrassment. They are people who mistake volume for depth, conviction for cruelty, and silence for strength. They are written not as individuals, but as rhetorical devices in an ongoing debate about who can be the most unreasonable. Naomi's independence becomes a villain trait, Jacob's deceit becomes redemption, Martin's control issues become love, Samantha's naivety becomes purity. It's a parade of contradictions, a masterclass in how not to write human behavior. The writers want to depict real, flawed people. Instead, they've created emotional hypocrites, characters who preach authenticity while drowning in pretense. Watching them is like witnessing a therapy session run by someone who's never been to therapy. Perhaps that's why Joey feels so singular. Amid this carnival of contradictions, he alone behaves like someone who's read a book, paid attention, and decided to act accordingly. The rest are trapped in a hall of mirrors, reflections without souls, principles without follow-through. And if there's one thing more dangerous than a villain, it's a hypocrite who thinks they're the hero. Nicole is a fascinating contradiction. A professional counselor incapable of counseling her own family. Her method of emotional engagement consists of hovering vaguely near disaster and declaring, with saintly detachment, that they'll have to work it out. She drifts through scenes like a ghost of maternal intention, present but useless. Her children explode around her, her ex-husband manipulates her, and her siblings spiral. Yet Nicole reacts with the composure of a woman who's just remembered she left the oven on. When she does attempt empathy, it's clinical rather than compassionate. She doesn't comfort, she observes. She speaks to her daughter as though she's conducting a case study, waiting for the hysterical outburst that will justify her detachment. The irony is unbearable. The therapist who can't listen, the mother who can't feel. Every time Kat tries to open up, Nicole's expression says it all. That faintly patronizing smile of someone eager to diagnose rather than understand. She treats her daughter like a client she doesn't particularly like. The audience has long speculated that Nicole's coldness masks deeper trauma, infertility, marital betrayal, emotional exhaustion. And that may be true, but the writing never bothers to articulate it. Instead, it relies on implication, leaving viewers to interpret what the scripts refuse to explore. She's written not as a woman unraveling, but as a woman perpetually on pause. Her silence isn't stoicism, it's narrative laziness. Even her romantic subplot, a flirtation with Ted's business partner, feels like an afterthought, an attempt to give her sexuality without giving her agency. The show treats her as a moral fixture, not a human being. She is a symbol of strength, which in this universe means repression disguised as maturity. Kat is the series' tragic heroine, or at least she should be. She's sharp, proud, wounded, and exhausting in equal measure. She's also the only character who occasionally acts like a person aware of how terrible everyone around her is. Yet the writing insists on punishing her for that awareness. The show delights in framing Kat as the perpetual troublemaker, the angry daughter, the jealous sister, the ungrateful niece. Her anger, however, is rarely misplaced. She is surrounded by hypocrites who gaslight her, betray her, and then criticize her for not smiling through it. Her mother treats her feelings like an inconvenience. Her father, Ted, treats her like a public relations problem. Her brother, Martin, treats her like a stress test for his temper. And then there's Eva, the half-sister from hell, a walking reminder that Kat's family loyalty is a one-way street. When Kat lashes out, the narrative calls her bratty. When she withdraws, she's cold. When she forgives, she's weak. The double standard is relentless. Kat isn't written as a complex woman. She's written as a dartboard for other characters' projections. The recent debacle, her storming out after hearing Eva call Ted Dad, was a masterclass in misrepresentation. Viewers were told to see her as childish, yet anyone paying attention saw something else: exhaustion. The woman had just been berated by her brother, dismissed by her mother, and then confronted with the sight of her father embracing the offspring of his infidelity. Her reaction, anger laced with despair, wasn't immaturity. It was the only sane response left. But this show despises female emotion unless it's performative. Kat's fury is labeled selfish because it isn't cute. Her heartbreak isn't soft or photogenic. It's raw, loud, and unfiltered, which the writers seem to confuse with villainy. If Nicole is emotional frostbite, Ted is chronic cowardice. His inability to make a single decisive moral choice is almost impressive. Every storyline he touches curdles. He betrays his wife, alienates his children, and then plays the victim when confronted. He wants to be forgiven for being spineless, a recurring disease among the show's men. Ted's greatest offense, however, is narrative. He's boring. His guilt lacks depth, his remorse feels rehearsed, and his good intentions are so transparent they could double as glassware. The writers seem convinced that having him cry occasionally will make him sympathetic. It doesn't. It just highlights how little accountability he possesses. The whole Eva situation is his crowning achievement in cowardice. He hides the truth, mishandles the reveal, and then seems shocked when his legitimate children spiral. He treats the emotional fallout as an administrative inconvenience, as though family trauma could be managed with a calendar reminder. What's infuriating is that the show keeps rewarding him. Every time he fumbles, someone else, usually a woman, is forced to clean up the mess. Nicole forgives him, Kat suffers him, Ava defends him. Ted is the black hole at the center of the family universe, pulling everyone into dysfunction while pretending he's the gravitational victim. Eva's role in this opera of self-destruction is complicated. She's both victim and villain, the daughter conceived from Ted's betrayal, forever paying for her father's sins. On paper, her struggle for acceptance should evoke sympathy. In execution, it's a mess. The writing can't decide whether Eva is a wounded soul seeking belonging or a manipulative usurper enjoying her chaos. One minute she's fragile and apologetic. The next, she's sleeping with her half-sister's boyfriend. The audience is told to pity her, but the narrative keeps proving she enjoys the havoc she causes. Her relationship with Kat is a study in mutual self-destruction. They orbit each other like rival planets, each convinced the other is the problem. Kat can't forgive, and Eva can't stop provoking. Together, they embody the show's thesis. No one in this family has ever heard of emotional boundaries. Even so, Eva's chaos serves a purpose. She exposes the family's hypocrisy. Everyone claims moral superiority, yet every last one of them has sinned just as deeply. Eva merely sins publicly. The rest prefer to do it in private, then hide behind righteousness. If Eva is chaos incarnate, Leslie is its origin story. Once painted as a villain, she's now being rehabbed into a misunderstood woman, a narrative contortion so desperate it could qualify as acrobatics. The writers are trying to convince viewers that this woman, who slept with a married man and endangered multiple people, is simply complex. It's the show's favorite trick, redemption by revisionism. Leslie isn't allowed to be villainous. She has to be tragic. Apparently, forcing abortions, running people out of town, and emotionally blackmailing half the cast are forgivable if you cry attractively afterward. Her newfound philanthropy is meant to soften her, but it only underscores the absurdity. You can almost hear the writers whispering, "See? She's helping now," as though volunteer work erases decades of sociopathy. The attempt to humanize her feels less like character development and more like narrative amnesia. What unites these storylines is the family's pathological need to rewrite history. Every sin is reframed, every betrayal justified, every consequence deferred. They treat morality like a revolving credit line. Borrow endlessly, pay rarely. Martin moralizes about integrity while gaslighting his sister. Nicole dispenses wisdom she never applies. Ted preaches forgiveness while withholding honesty. Kat fights for justice while practicing vengeance. Even Danny, who should be the comic relief, operates like an escapee from a therapy group where everyone failed their homework. The Duprees are a family of mirrors, each reflecting the other's flaws back at them until no one can tell who's right or wrong. It's almost Shakespearean, if Shakespeare had been writing daytime television for an audience with Stockholm Syndrome. What redeems this disaster, however, is Kat's fury. Unlike the self-absorbed tantrums of her male relatives, her anger feels earned. She's the only one who refuses to perform forgiveness for comfort's sake. She doesn't apologize for being hurt, and she doesn't pretty up her resentment. In a show obsessed with making women likable, Kat remains gloriously difficult. Her dynamic with Nicole is particularly excruciating. Nicole's detachment is written as wisdom, while Kat's confrontation is coded as immaturity. Yet Kat's version of truth-telling is the only one that feels authentic. Her mother's cold professionalism is survival. Kat's bluntness is rebellion. One represses, the other erupts. Together, they illustrate two sides of feminine endurance, the quiet martyr and the loud avenger. It's no coincidence that viewers have begun speculating about secret parentage, theories involving swapped embryos, donor eggs, or hidden surrogacy. The audience is so desperate for emotional logic that it's inventing it. The idea that Kat might not be Nicole's biological child isn't just gossip. It's wish fulfillment. It would explain everything: the disconnect, the disdain, the endless emotional frost. Even if it never happens, the theory says something powerful about how viewers experience the show. They're searching for meaning where the writers have provided only chaos. They're constructing coherence out of fragments, because the show itself refuses to. If there's a unifying cruelty in this universe, it's the show's treatment of its women. The men get complexity, redemption arcs, and endless excuses. The women get labels: hysterical, selfish, ungrateful, manipulative. Naomi is demonized for autonomy. Nicole is mocked for detachment. Kat is punished for anger. Eva is shamed for desire. It's a hierarchy of suffering where the women either conform or get crushed. Even when the show flirts with feminist themes, reproductive choice, emotional labor, professional ambition, it undermines them through tone. The female characters are allowed to be strong only if their strength serves a man's narrative. Naomi can assert herself, but only so Jacob can grow. Kat can fight, but only so Ted can reflect. Nicole can counsel, but only so Martin can heal. The women's agency exists to facilitate male enlightenment. It's not malicious, just lazy. The byproduct of writers who think feminism means giving a woman a job title before silencing her anyway. The chaos of these storylines is compounded by the show's utter disregard for continuity. Scenes contradict each other. Characters forget critical information. Emotional arcs reset weekly. It's as if the writers are daring the audience to care. Ted's family tree changes shape depending on the episode. Nicole's professional ethics fluctuate like the stock market. Kat's career and living situation vanish for entire stretches of time. Even physical spaces, homes, offices, restaurants, appear and disappear like hallucinations. This instability might have worked if the show were leaning into surrealism, but it's presented with total seriousness. The result is unintentional comedy, a world that wants to be dramatic but can't remember its own backstory. Given all this absurdity, one might ask why the audience continues to tune in. The answer lies in a paradox. The show's flaws make it addictive. Its chaos is its charm. Each episode is a sociological experiment in how far narrative incoherence can stretch before it breaks. Viewers have become amateur psychologists, reading emotional truth into scenes that were never written to contain it. They watch not for resolution, but for recognition, glimpses of real emotion buried under melodramatic rubble. Kat's rage, Naomi's conviction, Nicole's repression, these flashes of humanity pierce through the noise. It's the same instinct that keeps people watching train-wreck reality TV. The dysfunction isn't repellent, it's hypnotic. The audience doesn't believe in these people, but they believe in their chaos. At its core, the series operates on a peculiar moral calculus. Every sin is forgivable, but only if it's committed beautifully. Betrayal is fine as long as it's stylish. Hypocrisy is art if it comes with good lighting. Forgiveness is mandatory, sincerity optional. The show's ethics are as fluid as its dialogue. Characters are judged not by what they do, but by how likable they appear while doing it. Ted can ruin his marriage and still be sympathetic. Kat can speak truth and be labeled insufferable. Naomi can protect her autonomy and be painted as cruel. This moral inversion is what gives the show its strange allure. It's a universe where wrong is right, honesty is abrasive, and silence is virtue. Every family member is both hero and villain, saint and sinner, depending on the week's script rotation. Taken together, the Richardson Dupree saga reads less like a family drama and more like a psychological case study in generational dysfunction. It's a portrait of people addicted to their own pain. They don't solve problems, they preserve them. Every argument is ritualistic, every reconciliation temporary. And yet, amidst the noise, there's something profoundly human. Beneath the overwriting, the botched continuity, and the accidental misogyny, the show captures one uncomfortable truth. Families hurt each other in cycles because it's easier than changing. The Duprees are not villains, they're cowards. They cling to chaos because calm would require honesty, and honesty would destroy them. The tragedy is that the writers don't seem to realize this. They keep mistaking catharsis for conflict, healing for boredom. But the audience feels it instinctively. The buried ache, the longing for someone, anyone, to break the cycle. In the end, the show's most compelling theme isn't love or betrayal, it's survival. The women, for all their flaws, are the only ones still fighting to define themselves. Naomi refuses to be coerced into motherhood. Kat refuses to smile through humiliation. Nicole, even in her paralysis, refuses to crumble. Their rage is not a flaw, but a form of resistance, the only authentic language left in a world that rewards silence. The men posture, rationalize, and collapse. The women endure, even when endurance looks like madness. The show may never understand the brilliance it occasionally stumbles into, but it has, accidentally, created something resonant. A chorus of women screaming against the polite tyranny of forgiveness. It's messy, infuriating, often ridiculous, but it's real. And maybe that's the secret charm of this entire televised disaster. Beneath the contrivance and chaos, there's an accidental truth. The only thing stronger than this family's dysfunction is the women's determination to survive it. So yes, the writing is inconsistent. The set design looks like a hospital break room, and the continuity could be charted only with divine intervention. But somewhere inside this glorious catastrophe lies a spark of authenticity. A show that doesn't know what it's saying is still saying something.